Hello everybody and welcome back. And the party are in Iliacana and we're ready to set off to look at Silo. And we have still tied up on the back of Carrick's horse, Kalanos, the old ferryman. And his ferry is sunken in this river here. Well, it's only about 6 miles to Silo and we make good headway along the riverbank, which has a kind of a towpath worn through it, presumably with all the people and all the animals going to the river. So that just takes us 2 hours and the rain is steadily pouring down quite heavily on. Today was Surdain, the 13th of Thamont. And by the time we get to Silo, it is a small logging community and it has been burnt to the ground. There are some buildings sticking up, but because everything is so wet and it has been raining for a few days, everything is quite green and it looks like nature has taken it back already. This was attacked a few days before Sekuskin, so just about 8 days ago, and yes, it definitely looks like it's been reclaimed by nature. There are some rotting corpses of goblins, and we can tell from their armour and various things these were a mix of the wolf skull and the viper goblins. But some other creatures which may have been feeding off them have made their home here, and indeed this morning's encounter is 3 wolves. So let's roll for surprise. And we get surprise on the wolves. Now what are we going to do with that surprise? We could just ignore them, but again, we do want to search this place in case there is any kind of evidence as to where the goblins are coming from. So I think we're going to have to chase these wolves off, and there's only 3 of them, so their morale is quite low at 6. There's a good chance they will run off. So everybody gets off their horses. Liz and Sylvia take out arrows. Malin takes out a throwing dagger, and Donard and Carrick approach with melee. So these wolves stop what they're doing and they may be about 30 feet away, and they look up and, well, they get into that crouched position. Right, let's see what they do versus what we do. Who has initiative? And they get initiative. Right, I'm going to do a morale check for them. And if they throw a 7 or over, then they run. Oh yes, and that's a 12. They bolt immediately. And they leave us free to look around. Well, what is the sad remains of this little community? But there is nothing. So the only other thing we can do is go to the last place on the map that was drawn for us, which is Tsegenyev, or we can take a detour back to Sekuskin and drop off Captain Kalanos, who has become a bit more subdued after he was fed and watered. He's still not in his right mind, but I think he's coming round to the fact that he's not in danger and he's not quite so berserk. So that is what we do. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 21 miles. That's another 7 hours. So that takes us to 5 in the evening, and we get back to Sekuskin, and we have nothing to report to Piotr on the whereabouts of Stephen. We have nothing to report on the whereabouts of any goblins. The only thing we have to offer them is a deranged ferryman, who everybody knows quite well, so this is quite distressing. It's up to Irina and Kuzma, the 2 clerics, to take him in and, well, try and heal his mind. And we're told in the module that indeed that does work. So are we going to set off in the evening? No, we're going to wait until next morning, and we're going to set off along the edge of the woods to finally get to see the last settlement. The only other suggestion we have when we got back to Sekuskin is to go back to this bandit camp and logically work out if the Viper bandits stole the horses and sold them here, and then the Viper bandits moved on. Well, there may still be tracks of where the Viper goblins went to. So we'll see what this place has to offer, then we'll go back to here, and then we'll just, well, explore the area. We have only used up another day's rations, so we've got 12 days left, 5 days of normal rations and 7 days of dried rations. We'll be back in a minute when it's time to get up next morning and set off for Zygniew. Right, so we set off on Muldoon, the 14th of Thamont, which is our 8th day here. Right, and the weather is slightly better. The rain has gone from stormy to just rain. It's still overcast, it's cool, and there's still a wind. It's definitely a day for riding on horses with cloaks up, and we're going on a canter. I've worked out that it's about 3 miles per hour on open terrain on a horseback. And that's for a whole day's riding. 3 miles an hour might seem quite slow, but that's for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 hours of walking is quite a lot for anybody, and that is 27 miles. If you were to do that on foot, it would probably take you a day and a bit. But this is open terrain, and these are plains, gentle, rolling, flat hills. Maybe with some sparse trees. There might even be the odd cairn or dolmen sticking up in the distance that we can see. The land is rising to the northeast here, and the forest is covering the southwest. And our morning encounter today was refugees. And that's quite convenient because we're going to Zygniew. We meet the refugees about here, and they tell us that they are fleeing Zygniew. And sure enough, as per the description in the book, we can see smoke rising up from this burnt out village. The refugees do have something to tell us, that the goblins who attacked them, some of them fled and ran off southwest into the woods. That's a hint. The only reason they managed to escape was a troop of elves. Maybe they can't quite remember. Some say 3, some say 5, some say 7. It's difficult to tell with elves as some were hiding in the woods, but these people tell us it just so happened a passing troop of elves joined in the fight and killed and frightened off most of the goblins. After a bit of a thank you and some healing and some good advice, the elves went on their way eastward, leaving the refugees to go, well, to Sekuskin or to Misha's Ferry and eventually to Kelvin. I think that's what's going to happen here. We can't keep taking refugees into this place. At some point when they get back on their feet, they're going to have to go to Kelvin. But we have got 2 leads. We have some elves who went eastward, and they might tell us something. And we know that some goblins came from the southeast. 9 hours. If we set off at 7, it's 4 in the evening. We're going to look at the remains of Zygniew for a few hours, sit and eat something. So it's getting into dusk. I'm going to assume that this area, I don't know where the equator is on this world. I think it's where the Isle of Dread is, quite far south, but I'm going to guess that sunset, what we would have in March, would be about 7 o'clock. So this is getting into dusk. Most of the fires have gone out. The rain has put out most of the fire, and the damp wood, which is still burning, is just creating a massive smoke. And yet again, it's another miserable affair, but we have to find some kind of shelter, because we're not going to go back in the evening. We're going to take up our leads. We're either going to go eastward to follow the elves, or we're going to go southeast to look for the goblins. But whatever it is, we're going to find the remains of a building to keep our horses and our equipment dry and eat and work out what we're going to do. Do we want to travel this evening? Now, as we are thinking this through, all of a sudden, from nowhere, Sylvia, Carrick and Donard get swiped from behind. Sylvia, that swipe misses. Donard, that swipe misses. And Carrick, that swipe misses. 3 shadows have just lunged out of the ruins and have attacked the party. Right, it's time to jump up. Right, it's time to roll for initiative. That was their surprise. They get another attack in. The one on Sylvia, it's AC 3. which isn't enough to hit her because she has a shield, which means her AC is 1. She's got a shield +1. The one on Donard misses, as does the one on Carrick. Right, shadows can't be hit by normal weapons, only magical ones. I don't think Liz would know that. We haven't seen a shadow before. Shall we read up about a shadow? Right, the stats. Shadows are non-corporeal, ghost-like, intelligent creatures. They can only be armed by magical weapons. They look like real shadows and can alter their shape slightly. Shadows are hard to see and usually gain surprise on a 1 to 5 on a 1d6. If a shadow scores a hit, it will drain 1 point of strength in addition to doing normal damage. This weakness will last for 8 turns. Any creature whose strength becomes reduced to 0 becomes a shadow. Shadows are not undead and cannot be turned by clerics. Right, it says here the DM should not use shadows unless the party has at least 1 magical weapon. There was a chance we could have encountered shadows underneath Castle Mistamere all those months ago, but I didn't really do level 3. It was just ridiculously difficult for a level 1 party. So it's our turn. Let's do Carrick. Carrick Shadow Cleaver. And yes, while he hits, he does not kill it. One is down to 3 HP. These creatures did remarkably well in the HP. We have Donard, who hits, takes 1 from 15 to 10. And we've got Sylvia, who hits and does max damage. And she takes the one under her from 13 to 5. Right, now Liz is going to fire an arrow. I'll see if she does hit. And yes, she hits. They have quite a low AC of just 7. She hits but realises the arrow does nothing. Right, so I'm going to have to keep a tally on all the arrows used. And Malin, well, he can't use sleep, so I'm afraid he's just going to grab a burning brand from the little campfire that we've made. Okay, so it's round number 2. And we get initiative. Right, that's good. Carrick. Yes, and that is enough to kill the shadow on him. Donard, excellent hit. Okay damage. The shadow on him is down to 4. Sylvia. Well, maybe shadows are her chosen enemy. This is not normal for Sylvia. Yep, and she kills the shadow on her. There's only 1 left, and it's on Donard. Right. And it misses. So it's round number 4. No, it's round number 3. And we get initiative again. The morale is 12. They don't give up. So Carrick, Shadow Cleaver. Yep, lives up to the name. Even though that isn't great damage, it's more than enough to kill that last shadow. Right, it's pretty obvious we're going to have to be quite vigilant during this evening's watch. I wonder what drew the shadows here. Perhaps they were after the refugees, or maybe they just don't like elves, and they were after the elves. So the night is going to draw in. We're not going to set off in dusk. So let's roll for another evening encounter, and we'll see what that is. And that's 16 at night. Oh, that's more shadows. Okay, well, I'll be back in a minute and we'll take on these shadows. Right, it's the darkest part of the night, and 2 people are keeping watch. And they are going to be... oh, both the same person. At least one of them is Carrick. And the other one is also Carrick. Right, and that is Liz. Poor Liz, she almost gets... what's the odds that she's going to get hit? Okay. Right, So Carrick and Liz are on watch, and again maybe they're having another of these little conversations about what's it like to be an adventurer, or what is it you want from life. Everything here is made from the forest. There's certainly plenty of wood, including the remains of Turgenev, so it's no problem setting a campfire. There's enough remains of buildings that there's enough to make a shelter, and Carrick knows how to set a fire in such a way that it doesn't actually set the buildings on fire. So while they're staring into the flames, under what is the best kind of shelter they can make, Carrick asks Liz, "When you left Threshold, do you think many people missed you?" And Liz said, "Well, yes, my family, and I did have a couple of friends there." And he said, "What about the people of Threshold? Do you think they noticed that you'd gone?" And Liz laughed and said, "No, it's a bit of a hard place to live." And Carrick then says, "Do you think you made a difference when you were there?" And Liz again laughs and says, "No, there was really nothing to do when you're there." And Carrick just goes, "Okay, but just to let you know that you make a difference to us, and if you left, we would notice you had gone." And, well, Liz just falls silent at that. The silence doesn't last long, as suddenly there's a rasping hiss, and luckily it misses her. Yes. And also one goes for Carrick, and it hits him. Now Carrick is going to lose 1 point of strength, which means he's going to lose a Thaco point because his strength is 16, so he immediately drops down to the next level of strength bonus. And he's 2 points of damage off him. He's down to 21. That's a surprise round. Those two shadows just struck from nowhere. And we get initiative. Right, it's time to jump up and yell. Liz has her sword with her. And she misses. Carrick Shadow Cleaver. These shadows did very well on their HP. And well enough. Right, it's the shadows' turns. Oh, one badly misses Liz, off for once. And the other one hits Carrick again. His strength is down to 14, and he's down to 18 HP. Round number 2, and everybody else is woken up and grabbing their weapons, but it's still us on the shadows. The one on Liz misses. The one on Carrick misses, thankfully. Now it's Liz's turn. And her Thaco melee is good enough with sword +2. So, and she does 8 damage. The one on her is from 13 to 5. Carrick, whose strength is now 14, still manages to hit and does 14 damage. One on him is from 17 to 3. Right, it's round number 3. We get initiative and everybody else is up. Donald is going to attack the shadow that's on Liz, and he misses. Sylvia is going to attack the one that's on Liz, and that's good enough to hit and do 4 damage. The one on Liz is down to 1 HP. Liz is going to try and defend herself. Ah yes, revenge is sweet. And Carrick, Shadow Cleaver. Well, his Thaco is 12 at the minute, so yeah, that hits AC4. And yep, that's enough to kill it. Turgenev, quite literally, has become a ghost to town. Well, shadows aren't undead. It looks like evil has made a home here. Right, but we're going to have to ride out the rest of the night and wake up on Night Dane the 15th. Right, the party make it through the night and wake up on Night Dane the 15th of Thamont, and the weather is heavy dark clouds, stormy rain, cool with a gale. Can this get any worse? Well, we are told about the effects of weather. Rainfall. This can reduce both visibility and movement rates, although showers have no effect other than making the player feel uncomfortable. Rain reduces visibility to a maximum of 400 yards. 2 consecutive days of rain are the equivalent to a downpour for movement. Downpours reduce visibility to 100 yards and slow off-road movement by 25%. 2 or more days of a downpour reduces movement by 50%. In rain or downpour, unprotected bow and crossbow strings become damp and cannot be used until dried out. Well, Sylvia, Liz and Carrick have thrown their cloaks over their bows on their backs. Makes for an odd profile, but it is protecting them. Wind. The strength of wind affects missile weapons. In a wind, all missile weapon ranges are increased by 1 band for the purposes of accuracy. Short range becomes medium and so forth. In a gale, all missile weapons are limited to short range only, but are fired at -1 to hit. And this is kind of the conditions that we're under. We have had several days of rain and it's blowing a gale. I have put movement on a horse at 3 miles per hour. I calculated that by taking the movement speed of a riding horse at 240, dividing that by 5 to get 48 miles per day, then used a 16-hour day, which becomes 3 miles per hour. So under these extreme conditions, we're going to move at 2 miles per hour along the edge of this forest eastward. We're going eastward because we're going to follow the lead that the refugees gave us, that some elves helped fight off the goblins and those elves went eastward. I think that's better than just blindly going into the forest and looking for the other lead, which is that the goblins headed off somewhere southeast. So at about 2 miles per hour, that is 3 hours to cover 2 hexes as we hug the edge of the forest in an attempt to get out of the gale force winds. And we are going uphill. It's going to take us about 10 hours to get here, so that is about 5 in the evening. And our journey here at this slow pace, nobody has spoken. We see these hills rising to the north, but they're covered in mist and fog, and we can hear the rain falling off the leaves of the trees, and the only sound is the plodding of horses' hooves. Nobody is speaking. This is a damp, miserable, quiet day. This gives everybody a chance to just live in their own thoughts for, well, 10 hours. Finding somewhere dry to eat is next to impossible. Trees themselves have started to shed rainwater. So the best we can do is just get the horses huddled together under a tree, then just eat something while you're huddled under your cloak. And when we get to here, evening is setting in. There is no sun, but the sky is sort of darkening and going redder here to the west. We can see a valley, and that at least takes us out of the hills and the worst of the wind. It takes another 6 hours to get here, which is the middle of the night, and we find some sort of shelter at the foot of the hills here. I did roll for a daytime encounter, and it was a 5, which was no encounter. Once we leave the forest behind and we enter these hills, when we're here, visibility is so poor that when we get to the bottom of the valley, on a roll of 1 to 3, the party get lost. And yes, when we get here and camp for the evening, we have to admit we're lost. Well, let's hope this evening doesn't bring more undead upon us out of the fog, and let's hope tomorrow the weather clears so we can at least see where we are. And that is it for today. So I will see you all next time.